Ever since the first Pikmin games launched, players have always wondered what's the best type, and now that Pikmin 4 is out, players are once again asking that age-old question. So what is the best type in Pikmin 4? Now, that's a tough question. How can one Pikmin type be better than the other? There has to be a certain criteria for this list, because technically they're all equally as good. You need every Pikmin type to beat the game, so how do we determine which is better? What makes Pikmin 4 different from the other games is that we can only have 3 types out at once, unlike the other games when you could just have an even split of 20 and not need to think twice. In this list, we are not going to judge the Pikmin in a vacuum. Instead, we're going to compare them to each other due to our 3-type limit. I think that's the best way to objectively decide which Pikmin type is better than the other. Take a look at Smash Ultimate. There isn't one distinct best character in the game. Yeah, some are better than others, but a lot of the time, even the best characters still get beat out by a bad matchup. Same for Pikmin. I'm not looking for the perfect Pikmin type, just the one that's the most useful in as many situations possible, or in Smash terms, has the most winning matchups. I'm gonna assume all Pikmin types are available from the get-go, meaning certain types can invalidate others. Pikmin 4 is surprisingly a pretty balanced game. None of the Pikmin types are bad per se. I understand some were meant to be more prominent in the early game, and that's why some of the later Pikmin types are typically better. But it sucks to suck. Ochi is a big problem for this list because he invalidates pretty much every Pikmin type in one way or another. So I'll try to leave him out of the conversation as much as possible. But we still need to remember, he is the main gimmick of the game. So I think it's fine to talk about how certain Pikmin types work with Ochi rather than working against him. Before I start off, one more disclaimer. I'm only ranking the Pikmin in situations when we can actually choose them. Dandori battles and challenges don't matter too much for this tier list because regardless of how good or bad the Pikmin is, we're stuck using them anyways, so that gets rid of the whole choice factor. I'll be ranking the Pikmin using the standard tier list system, and their respective pros and cons will equal up to a score out of 100. The higher the score, the more likely I am to use them in a general playthrough. Each Pikmin type will progressively get better than the previous, and their score will directly relate to their overall usefulness in combat, puzzle solving, efficiency, and niche abilities. But with all that being said, let's get into the list. Coming in dead last place, we have the yellow Pikmin. Now this is my hot take of the video, but listen to my reasoning first. Yellows have 3 abilities: higher throw height, faster digging speed, and immunity to electricity. Yellow's throw height is pretty much deemed useless once we unlocked wing Pikmin, so one of their abilities are already invalidated. The faster digging speed is cool and actually pretty helpful, but it's not groundbreaking. Every Pikmin can dig, it just so happens that yellows do it slightly faster. So why would I pick yellows if every other Pikmin type can do the same thing and more? Lastly, we got their respective hazard, and I'm gonna say it. Electricity is the most underutilized hazard in this game. Other than a select few enemies and electric gates, there's not much of a reason to fear electricity. I'm sorry yellows, but you peaked in Pikmin 2. Low C tier. Next up, we have the white Pikmin, who fall into a similar issue as the yellows. These guys have 3 abilities and 1 inability. They can carry objects much faster, have a poison immunity, and have a unique ability of damaging most enemies when eaten, but at the cost of having a 0.5 attack multiplier. Like yellows in their digging speed, white Pikmin being able to move faster isn't a game changer. Every Pikmin type can carry objects, and since we're excluding Dandori challenges for this list, a couple second difference isn't the end of the world. However, despite their low attack power, the reason I rank them above the yellows is because poison is a much more dangerous and prominent hazard throughout the game, especially later on. And I'm sorry, but you'll never find me sacrificing my white Pikmin to damage an enemy. There's much easier and more efficient ways to take down enemies without having to kill your own Pikmin. Plus, white Pikmin taste gross. They're useful, but not my first choice. C tier. This one's gonna surprise a lot of people, but next up, we have the wing Pikmin. Now, a lot of people have been saying that these are the worst type in the game due to their janky pathing system, and although that is true, wings have one massive redeeming factor, that being they can fly, because they have wings. Flight is an ability no other Pikmin type has, meaning they can't quite be replaced, and being able to fly makes transporting things back to the base easier than it's ever been. They can traverse over water, mud, conveyor belts, walls, and more. And although things like this will happen sometimes, I still think wing Pikmin have proven themselves more useful than the previous types. In my opinion, wings should be higher on the list, but their horrible pathfinding and 0.5 damage multiplier is too detrimental to their viability. Wings are useful, but their pathfinding needs to be fixed. High C tier. I had some trouble deciding who should be next on the list, but I think rock Pikmin deserve this spot. Rocks are pretty good at combat with a 2x damage multiplier. The downside is they can't latch onto enemies, making their attacks more infrequent. Rocks are also immune to being crushed unless they're standing on a hard surface. They have a small use of breaking down crystal walls, but those things don't appear too often in the game. When you take a look at their abilities, these guys are pretty solid. Solid? See what I did there? Because rocks are hard and solid. But they're not a bad Pikmin type at all. Specializing in combat, these guys rock. Alright, I'm done. If you throw a handful of these guys on Ochi and charge at an enemy, more times than not, they'll just insta-die. But the reason I couldn't put them higher on the list is because as a Pikmin who specializes in combat, some other types just do it better. Rock Pikmin are a solid choice for combat. Mid B tier. Falling shortly ahead of Rock Pikmin, we have the Mario of the Pikmin franchise, the Red Pikmin. They're the first type we unlock in every game up until now and serve as an overall well-rounded type. With a 1.5 damage multiplier, fire immunity, and the new ability to use fire starters, Red Pikmin can be very useful. Although they may not be as good as Rocks in combat, Red's fire immunity makes them more useful, as fire is a pretty prominent hazard. Also, they're the only Pikmin type who can transfer the fire starters around the map, which is essential for the Giant's Hearth and a few other caves too. So all in all, Red Pikmin are the most well-rounded Pikmin type, but they don't shine in any specific area. Steve the Red Pikmin will always be a nice addition to your party. High B tier. I can't believe I'm putting these guys this high on the list considering the past track record, but Blues take up our next spot. After being the worst Pikmin type in nearly all previous games, Nintendo finally gave these guys justice. Blues can travel through water both on surface and fully submerged. They can swim in the water if you charge them at an enemy and now have their own respective hazard. And I think that last one puts them this high on the list. Sprinklers and water geysers are by far the most prominent hazard in the game, and having Blues to beat them out makes things a lot easier. Being able to traverse underwater is a whole other advantage that only blue Pikmin have. Wings can fly over and ice can freeze the water, but with a lot more areas taking place completely under the water, blues have been more useful than ever. And I can't talk about blues without mentioning the serene shores, because this whole map revolves around the blue Pikmin. From zero to hero, blues are finally useful. Low A tier. Coming in at third place, we have the glow Pikmin. Now, in theory, these guys are hands down the best type in the game. They're resistant to all hazards, instantly returns the captain whenever idle, and can fuse together into a giant green ball of death, which deals a massive amount of damage and stuns enemies. In order to balance these guys, Nintendo gave them an attack multiplier of 0.5. But the reason I can't put them any higher on the list is because they're only available in night mode missions or in caves, making them virtually useless in more than half the game. A great upside to them though is that if you're in a cave and need more Pikmin, you could just use your glow seeds and literally spawn in more. These guys are just a better version of the Bulbmin, although nothing will be as iconic as them. Glow Pikmin are objectively the best, but locked down to only half the game. High A tier. In second place, we have the newly introduced Ice Pikmin. They have a countless amount of abilities that make them useful in both combat and basic exploration. Ice Pikmin are resistant to their respective hazard, ice. And although it's the weakest hazard in the game, that's not the reason they shine. Ice Pikmin have the ability to freeze bodies of water, which in a way invalidates blue Pikmin and any other enemy touching the water. But we haven't even talked about their combat abilities yet. With an attack multiplier of 0.5, Ice Pikmin serve as a support fighter in most situations. However, they're more than capable of dealing with enemies on their own. As Ices attack an enemy, a blue meter will charge up, and once it's full, the enemy will become frozen for a hefty period of time. This gets even better when you attack an airborne enemy, because once they freeze, they'll come falling to the ground and shatter. The only downside is if you kill an enemy that's frozen, you won't receive their dead corpse. You'll get nectar instead, which isn't the worst. And I almost forgot, when you eat an Ice Pikmin, the freeze meter will drastically go up, and in some cases, insta-freeze an enemy. One downside though is that Ices die faster to every hazard in the game. Ice Pikmin put the game on easy mode, and they're crucial to have in battle. Low S tier. And last but not least, the king has returned. After being nerfed to the ground in Pikmin 3, the purple Pikmin made the comeback of the decade. These guys aren't nearly as busted as they were back in Pikmin 2, but they still reign supreme in Pikmin 4. Like Reds, purple have a 1.5 damage multiplier, but their true powers come in from their shockwave. When throwing a purple Pikmin, on that initial hit, enemies will take a hefty amount of damage, and even if you miss, as long as they're in the shockwave radius, enemies will still take damage from that initial slam. This one ability alone makes purple Pikmin the most useful type to have in your party, because combat of any sorts is made 10 times easier with these guys. Purples also have a carry weight of 10 units, meaning you don't need to waste too many Pikmin when carrying items back to the base. And apparently purples are also immune to being blown away or inhaled, which I didn't even know up until now. The only downside purples have is that they move slower, but now that we can just ride Ochi, movement speed is as irrelevant as ever. Regardless of what map or cave I'm going into, I'll always have purples in my party. High S tier. But this list wouldn't be complete without ranking the dog Pikmin. I said it before and I'll say it again. Ochi is busted. Immunity to every hazard, strong attack, an insane amount of health. You can ride him, you can charge him, you can even jump with him. Ochi is literally a Pikmin Captain hybrid. I know it's not fair to compare him to the other Pikmin types, so I think he deserves his own tier. Ochi is the best addition to Pikmin 4. God tier. Like I said before, Pikmin 4 is a very balanced game. Every Pikmin type has their own specific use, but obviously some are better than others. Before I end off the video, I'm going to do a quick rundown of my final thoughts for each type. Yellows would have been much more useful if electricity insta-killed like in Pikmin 2. White should have kept their unique ability to see treasures underground instead of giving it to all Pikmin types. Wings are a lot of fun, but they don't use their wings to their full potential. Rocks were aces of combat until purple showed up. Reds are the most well-rounded Pikmin type in the game, and that's not a bad thing. Blues make traveling around the map easier than ever. I just wish they had a unique combat ability. Glow Pikmin are objectively the best type in the game, but locked down to the caves in night mode. Ice Pikmin's ability to freeze enemies have saved my ass one too many times. Purples are mandatory to have in your party at all times. Their shockwave ability is beyond busted. Ochi's a fucking dog in a Pikmin game. Do I need to say more? Keep in mind, everyone has their own unique playstyle, so certain Pikmin types may be more useful to others. It's difficult to make a completely objective tier list because everyone experiences the game in their own way, but I believe this is a pretty reasonable tier list. I really want to see how you'd rank the Pikmin types, so please let me know your list in the comments. I'm looking forward to reading them all. Thanks for watching.